Merry Christmas. That's when,
Wow.
yeah, that's when this one's coming out. Disrupt Education. I'm Peter Hostrasser. That's Allie Dahl. How are you doing, Allie? What's up?
I'm good. And just for anybody watching, we did not plan to wear red and green.
The red and
Like
blue, or the red and green.
the red's coming through.
Yeah.
And but we did know that recording this episode is gonna come out on Christmas if you celebrate, you know. I
Yeah.
celebrate Christmas, you celebrate Christmas.
Yep.
Um, and I guess subconsciously I don't like green, my green sweater today for that.
That was funny. I was like, coming from broadcast journalism, you're really not supposed to wear red on camera. And so I had to kind of find this, flannel that's got some gray in it. So, yeah, if I went red, it would bleed all over. But Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays for everybody. Yeah, this is that 1 year, I think, overall, since we started releasing our podcast on Wednesdays, that we land on Christmas and then our 2025 lands on New Year's. So I'm not sure if that ever happened before. I have to go back and see, or I might have been like posting on different days or whatnot. But here we go. We're wrapping up 2025 and just gearing up for 2024. I'm already ahead of myself. 2024, that's crazy. And then we're headed into 2025. So we have we'll kind of unpack this, but the how around education to disrupt it, the mindset of education, and then the why. You kind of laid that out in our previous conversation right before the podcast, Allie. Um, Start us off. We jumped in with the how and Don Wettrick, who I love. Don, he's an awesome
Oh
dude.
my goodness. So when we I always like to pull back the curtain a little bit because I feel like people appreciate that. You know, when you're listening to a podcast, I like to look when I'm listening to podcasts, I love when like the hosts share just little like nuggets that you're like they do, it's just fun. So we do a decent amount of preparing for this episode, and it's kind of, I mean, it's definitely a celebration to kind of go back through and think like, what did we hear and explore and learn and disrupt in a whole year? And I I went back and I listened to a couple episodes that I in the moment I felt were really transformative, and then like listening to them almost a year later, Don Wettrick is like the episode that keeps giving,
Mhm.
right? Like he kicked off 2024 on such a high note, and his man, just some of the phrases that he uses are just so needed now. One of them that it's so good that I don't even think we really like unpacked it afterwards because it's just like one of those things you needed to hear it like the second or the third time. But he said sometimes what you think is your disadvantage is your advantage.
Yeah.
I was like, what? He was referring to like, being a rural school or an urban school, or, like people can always find their disadvantages and what they dislike. And he just says, use it.
Yeah.
And I really love that. He came out firing. He literally came out with fire, which is an interesting word that he chose in that episode to drop because that's where we're headed for
Yes.
2025.
Yes.
But yeah, amazing episode. If you need like one, I mean, it's so hard to pick because we had 22 amazing guests.
Yeah.
Um, but if you really want just like a solid episode to jump into the podcast and like be inspired, listen to the Gary V of education, which is Don Wettrick.
Absolutely. He did go on and kind of pull a lot more people into a group. And anybody you want to look them up on LinkedIn, that year, that was obviously in early 2024. And by springtime, we were having conversations, obviously outside of the podcast. I was transitioning into a different job. And he was creating a little bit further of a started up foundation and a group of educators, and you can find that on his LinkedIn. And there's a lot going on. So he made headway within 4 or 5 months after that podcast. So you can go back. That was a great launch into the year. So glad that he agreed to do that.
Mhm.
Our next guest was Pam Roy, and taking the passenger seat in education, right?
I know. I think so when we're kind of going through these guests, right? I will say from Don Wettrick down to Jeanette Starpine,
Hmm.
those are our winter and spring. And at the time, we didn't really kind of develop this is like behind the scenes stuff, right? We hadn't fully like fleshed out a series. We just were really passionate about finding amazing disruptors and in different fields, but we ended up really trying to go for like unique perspectives.
Yeah.
And each of them equipped us with kind of different how is it possible to disrupt education? How can we reach students? And ultimately what I've in synthesizing the year, one of the things that I really thought about is like, so Dawn really helped us reach students through change and showing how teachers are the pivotal part of
Mhm.
economic changing economic development for a community. With Pam, she really showed us how we can reach students and the how to reach students at home.
Yep.
And that is like it's two sides to the same coin. Like I really felt like Don and Pam showed us like we need a strong teacher, center in the community and that hub, but like at home is so important. And she did a really good job of reminding us like of of grades and their importance or lack thereof, depending on, she has got a great story. The book is awesome. And it's if you're like a parent and you need an episode to kind of just like ground yourself in education, that's definitely the one to do it.
Yeah. Pam has been on before, and just a huge Viktor Frankl fan. An amazing person. She blogs. She's actually released a film this year. Or was that last year? I don't know. Things go so fast. And now she's an author, and she has that she's just a great person who really sees the differences, especially in her own children, the different paths they go. And to our superintendent where I'm at now, I mean, he sees that as well, and he's adjusting or helping adjust the system
Mm.
accordingly, which is that's just great. And then we went to the Scrollaholic slash Josh Schuba, who he's not a scrollaholic, but I mean,
Mhm.
what a story behind him. Because at this time we had just brought him into a couple of classes, and the kids literally just stopped in their tracks and kind of jaw dropped and listened to what he was saying about um, having a device in your hand, and how um, kind of the brainwashing was happening. Just an amazing, and he's still continuing. And if you follow him, you can see where his journey has gone. So it's amazing.
It's incredible. I mean, he's like producing like mini films.
Right.
It's incredible his journey from where he was when we recorded him about a year ago to now. And I think, you know, so right, he's really good at reaching people online and showing them almost like how to get offline or how to, use the online space to your benefit, right? Like to be intentional and craft your corner. And he's got tons of different messages, a great Gen Z advocate for disrupting the online space and education. If we have Mark Perna at the end of the year and from a different perspective of reaching Gen Z, but like if you need a Gen Z who is like very self-aware
Mhm.
about like what Gen Z needs, Josh is the person to connect with. And that's another great thing about the podcast is like all of our guests they love like if you're like, hey, heard you on the Disrupt Education podcast, they're going to be like, great, and they like will love connecting with you. So like they are very approachable, wonderful people who want to do good work in their communities and around the world, many of them. So Josh is awesome. Definitely give him a follow on your favorite platform.
Right.
I see him on Instagram. I'm sure he's doing similar stuff on the other ones.
Yeah, yeah, it's very interesting, just to kind of, just to see everybody's growth, through through this year. And I think that's something that, again, pulling back those curtains, we get to see that. And you all can see that too. If you go back and listen, you can see where that people came from. If you're just a new listener, or if you are a listener, you just go check on these people again and check their statuses. You can see the growth, which hopefully is going to inspire you, because they're laying the foundation of how we did after Josh, a couple of kind of on our own, a little bit about, hey, teachers have choice and teachers have, we kind of threw a couple of things out there on helping systems understand, how to retain your teachers, and how to work with them. And it is interesting because we had just had the conversation a couple of weeks ago, about, guess what? Like, younger teachers right now are not married to the fact that they're going to be 25 years, 20 years in the same system, or even in the education systems that are like public schools and such. There are plenty of opportunities out there. And our next guest, Joanne Kaminsky, who is a second time guest as well, does a lot of online tutoring, and she started that way. And she dug into it and kind of helped people understand a little bit of the marketing besides their knowledge that teachers can bring.
Yes, we did a nice little Valentine's love on teachers this year. It feels like last year, but this will still come out in 2024. And right, showing teachers how they have choice,
Mhm.
and then really we felt like the great follow-up to that was Joanne with her tutoring business, and like the kind of, you know, just empowering teachers. Like if you're feeling burnt out and you want to, I think if you want to reinvigorate yourself and you want to tutor and just focus on the part of teaching that maybe is the essence of what you love, because that's what I heard when she was sharing about tutoring. She's like, I get to do the best part, right? Like it's just teach the lessons. It's just connect with the students, which is what you hear why most educators, they do what they do. They're like, I do it for the kids, I do it for the students. And so, if you're feeling like you're drowning in many other tasks, maybe simplify or just do tutoring on the side to connect back to maybe like your why. But she really showed us how to reach students through tutoring and the benefit of it, right?
Mhm.
Like, and she does a lot of homeschool students. So it's like if you're a homeschool, or considering it, you don't have to do everything alone. I think that was the other thing, is
Yeah.
that people have this mindset that tutoring is, you know, it's exclusive for people that are like want perfect ACT scores or, like inflated GPAs. And it's not that. It can literally be because there's tutoring in all different areas that you can help student learning grow. And it was a refreshing episode on how to do that. So lots of practical advice. That was a whole masterclass in how
Mhm.
to start a tutoring business,
Mhm.
which is kind of where the year inadvertently took us. Is a lot of these are standalone master classes,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Absolutely. And then she mentioned something about tutoring worldwide, and obviously we were talking about hybrid education, and how people are working with people outside of the education system. And we found Melissa McBride in the UK, who was kind enough to stay up pretty late for us for that podcast, and is the CEO at Sophia High School, which is basically bringing hybrid education and the humanistic piece to that. That's a great episode as well, just to kind of see. I think we've been stateside a lot, and every once in a while we'll jump across the pond, and we did. So Melissa was wonderful.
I I think she really showed us how to reach students through innovation and how to use technology in ways that are really not, I mean, like based on all the conversations that we have with disruptors here in the US, like the work that she's doing there, she is partnering with schools here in the US, but she's like showing how it's done and like dismantling administration and like dismantling the traditional model of school hierarchy. And if you just want a perspective across the pond and to be like it is possible, and they do have models like that here in the US. It's refreshing, and I'm so glad that we got her,
Mhm.
and she really talks about all these cool virtual experiences and VR, virtual reality stuff, and how to integrate that. And it's just interesting, right? Like it's super innovative, and I think there's nuggets in that episode that if like in re-listening to it, I'm like, oh, I didn't catch that the first time. Sometimes we're like taking notes, and so the work that they're doing over there is incredible, and it's a good model. And they have like a conference that's it's branded very similar to the podcast with the disruptors,
Mhm.
and so that's how we connected. It's just fun to find lots of people trying to disrupt the system whilst either still being in the system or kind of tangentially next to the system. She's doing that in the
Yes,
UK.
yes, absolutely. And then we went to the CEO, president, I should say, executive director of the CAPS Network, Corey Mohn. What a great guy. We've talked to Nate Clayberg before. So we just went to the top and really kind of connecting professional part. That's kind of, where we started our little bit of a CTE walk here, which we ended very predominantly, I guess, in the Y at the end of the year. But Corey set us up in the middle, basically really talking about the best practices of connecting business partners, the community, and schools, in the way that they do that at the CAPS network and beyond. So, yeah, that guy needs to be in a classroom all the time, I think. I don't know.
Passionate, and you listen to that
Yes.
episode and it's just oozing off of him. And if you're interested in the CAPS network, like definitely connect with Corey. What they have a great program. I mean, obviously we it was early days when we were podcasting together. We talked to Nate Clayberg, and the stuff that they're doing in Iowa is incredible. And Corey's in Kansas City, and so I there's just it's a network. And so it's like you don't have to do this work alone. And
Mhm.
he really, I think, when we were inadvertently doing these hows, it he really showed us like how work-based learning can work, how it can be started, and it can be done. There's tons of people doing it. So it's just very pragmatic approach, and it gives really high school students the opportunities to do, you know, work-based learning, esque CTE stuff, and have it be exceptional, right? Like they have a ton of resources and a whole bunch of people doing it, so you
Mhm.
don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's what I loved from that. I'm like, okay, if I was gonna do this, I wouldn't feel alone. I could totally take this on.
Before we went to our last two guests on this kind of how area, it was interesting because I think it's kind of the mood of school year. When you're coming into the springtime, there's a lot going on. And I kind of retrospect this going in before we jumped into our kind of summer shift is I was actually going through a job interview process at the time, and we jumped on accountability a little bit, talking about how do we hold our learners accountable? And again, that's kind of prefacing some of the CTE and the work that our community and school. When we start to drop that border between the two, you're going to see a little bit more accountability, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So we kind of unpack that. There's an episode in there. And then we actually you revealed something that was really cool statistically, the financial aspect. Is it financially viable to become a teacher? And what was it? Teachers were in the top 10 of millionaires. Is that where that number was?
Yep, it was. It was like we're like 8 or 9, but still top 10.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it can be viable. I mean, it's like, it's kind of a spicy headline, but at the same time, it just talks to me about the caliber of educators.
Hmm.
And, I think that's one of the hardest parts about being an educator is you're probably like really smart. You're good at doing your job. You're a true professional. And oftentimes in the traditional system, You are not made to feel that way.
Right.
And so,
Right.
right, but like teachers find a way.
Yeah.
That episode, like in reflecting back on it, is like, you know what? Even though you don't necessarily pay teachers what they're worth, they're still going to make money. They're going to figure it out,
Hmm.
whatever that means. And so I think it was empowering to hear that. It's like you can figure it out. You are capable, no matter where you're at. I think that's the message there. Is that educators are, man, they're some of the most resourceful people out there.
And it's becoming, I mean, it kind of goes back to the retention piece. I think, that those kind of went together with little breaks in there with our how people. Um, and it really did start to, we got a little bit of feedback on there where people were, hey, I can do something different. I can do a side hustle. Well, that's what we're doing here, right? So, and we had that conversation actually about a week ago as well, where teachers are the, certain teachers I've seen people were talking about, they just write their number down and push it across the table and say, this is what it's going to take to get me into this system. That's coming more and more. So there is some interesting power and financial viability there. I really like this next one. Mary Rupenthal. We were going through at my previous district, and I think most of it is done. I think they're still working on part of it, a construction piece. And I'm a huge ergonomics person. I think that if you are in a boring room that's a classical educational, I shouldn't say classical, but a traditional old school model, you're losing. And Mary just came with some amazing, amazing ideas and amazing concepts that she helped put into play at HED. Being an architect, especially around education, I was so inspired by that. Definitely not an interior designer or anything, but it started to give you ideas on where your students can learn and what you can do to your buildings to
Yeah.
really take a look at being proactive. And I'll give Scott Carr a little shout out here, like teach like it's 2045, right? So I really like that. What did you take from Mary?
Mary's my favorite line from Mary's podcast is rigid classrooms struggle with modern methods. And if you want to know some behind the scenes of what goes into modern educational spaces, it was totally a disruptive episode in my mind. Like, I would say it's by far the most unique guest of 2024. Like it was a topic that you had never explored in
Hmm.
all the years. And if you're like, yeah, I really want to know how to reach students through the space that we're in, Mary is the person to talk to.
Yeah.
Tons of creative ideas at any level. Like, right, as a classroom teacher, you can think about and use some of her ideas. And then obviously, if you're a planner at a district level or building or remodeling a space, you want to have somebody that understands the changing dynamics and planning for the future, right? So one of the big things she talked about was like, again, you can't design a space for right now. You have to design a space for 5 to 10 years or more from now. Super interesting. I feel like it's like a crystal ball. You're trying to predict what will the students need, but they look at trends and stuff, and
Yeah.
you can't really predict it. But it's very interesting to think like many of us are still in classrooms that you've seen the movies from the 1940s, 50s.
Right.
I don't know. They're
Yeah.
not, the desks are different, but other than that, they might still be the same
Somewhat.
building.
There's some old school ones in there. But I think, the one thing that I really liked about her was really, I mean, there are some things you can be reactive to, and school has still stayed afloat being reactive. It's not ideal in any sense, but I don't think you can be reactive when you're planning spaces for the future. You have to be proactive, and it was a great lesson that I took from that episode. And also, if you are an admin and you have some projects coming up, I would definitely reach out to Mary. She's done some amazing things. and really look forward rather than just reacting to or how many students you have coming in your building just to fill the gaps. So I think I was a little grumpy about that in my previous district and how they were handling that. But that's all good. And we rounded this one out with Dr. Jeanette Starpine. Yes, great friend of yours,
Yes.
environmental advocate, science educator that just like dove headfirst in to really making some change around the Climate Science Alliance. Talk to me. Talk to our. I mean, she was an amazing roundout about how.
I know. If you are looking for one like how to disrupt anywhere in any organization at any level, that's the episode to listen to. And
Yep.
also, Jeanette really showed us how to reach students through community
Right.
and all of what she does. And you hear it in every part of her story. Like she does a phenomenal job of sharing her story.
Hmm.
And Jeanette is just a disruptor at every level. I mean, from when undergraduate to going to Australia to coming back and doing her PhD and working, in San Diego and now with the Community Alliance. It's just, it's incredible. I personally know and have worked with Jeanette, so of course I'm biased, but I've worked with Jeanette for coming up on over 2 years, two and a half
Hmm.
years, and I mean, it, Jeanette's incredible.
Yeah.
10 out of 10 human being, and it comes through on that episode. I mean, just overflow is and just it, it's such a great episode to kind of like it almost goes into the mindset series that we did in the summer, but
Right.
it's like it's still just like how to reach students
Yeah.
through community and at any stage. You can be a student and listen to that and get inspired. So it's great.
Jeanette, the round out there was how Jeanette really just basically you listen to the stories and how they just didn't care. Like they just knew like this is what I do, and wherever it takes me, I'm going to constantly level up. So go
Right.
back to that episode because it really laid up our mindset episode for summertime. I think it was inadvertent. We wanted somebody to round out the how. And here we are ready from going to how to mindset. And it was a great episode to do that. So if you need any inspiration and just somebody who really controls what they can control and lets go and understands how to communicate, you said it perfectly there. And then it started getting warm here because we went right back to Peppo, who has
Peppo.
now opened um, his second, I guess, Peppo Subs, and is very close to their third, making moves. Saw a lot. Again, somebody else who was in the middle of a lot of things and going for it. This is why I love Robert. He's a dear friend of mine. And just no BS with this guy. He's just like, look, if you want to go do it, go do it. If you don't, get out of my way. He has an amazing team, a core team that we're going to see a lot more of these Peppo subs, but it's more than that. It's family. And if you follow him on any social media, you'll see. But that episode really set us up for mindset. Surrounding yourself with the people who are on board, not even worrying about the people who aren't, and start your journey.
Exactly. Right. So you have all these hows and then you really are like, well, what? Like, what do I need to equip myself to do the hows? It's the reverse, but it's really important to get your mind right. And if your mind isn't right, like you can do little hows here, but it's not going to get you very far to make like substantial changes and crush it. Like that was our summer series. It
Yep.
was like crushing it, how to do it. And really, okay, this episode coming out on Christmas, we're going into the dark wintry days. It's just it's often a slower period of time, but that's exactly what Peppo talked about, is that that is when you make your power plays,
Yep.
is it's not in your busy season. You have to realize the slow season and then ramp up accordingly. And like that's where you do all your planning and preparing in order to crush it during the busy time. And so when we talked to him in December, January of last year, he then was in his slow season because subs sell more in the summertime, I
Mhm.
guess, with the food trucks and everything.
Yep.
So then he really ramped it up, and you saw that. At least we saw that. It was just cool to kind of, you know, well, I guess we did talk to him in the spring, but what I'm saying is like he was talking about it's the opposite for teachers. The
Right.
summer is the
Yeah.
slow season, but his is
Right.
the winter time. And he talked about all of that and how he prepared himself for the busy season. Anyway, he is just if you need someone like to daily like, turn up the dial on like how to get your mind right. His mental fortitude is out of this world.
Yes. Yes.
And so if you need someone he's not like officially a mindset coach, but he might as well be.
Right.
It's definitely a master class in mindset. That episode. If you
And,
listen between the
uh,
lines.
totally. Yeah. I mean, I don't know why he doesn't do his own masterclass. I'm sure he's going to write a book. I can almost guarantee he'll write a book somewhere along the way. But just a great person to launch us into our summer, mindset. What I really liked about our next guest was the humbleness, right? Like here
Mm,
is a woman who is a dental hygienist for 32 years and really just went deep into, hey, guess what? I can instruct and create programs she is a dental instructor and created a dental occupations program.
hmm
Again, somebody who just really understood their skill sets and what they really wanted to do. And then all of a sudden, when we started, getting ready for this episode, I don't know if you remember, it was like 75 like accommodations and awards that were just 75 is blowing it up. But it just kept coming, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And she's just driven, right? She's a driven person. That's Cindy Midget. What did you take from Cindy?
I mean, everybody needs a Cindy in their life, is what what I took away from the. She's just somebody that if you were working with her, you would always have like I feel like you would have the mindset to do the work. Like
Hmm.
she is humble, but she is all things CTE and specifically with the dental, hygiene and that area. But she just has this knowledge, this expertise, this eloquence in her story and in what she does that you just feel like you can do anything.
Right.
And that's what the summer series was about, right? Like yes, she does share some how all of our guests do, but in terms of getting your mind right to make changes, you really do have to kind of it's like we don't want to have blinders on, but at some point you do. You have to cancel out the noise of
Yeah.
anybody who says you can't or what needs to be done. Like you have to be like, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna figure it out. And it doesn't really matter what gets thrown at me. And Cindy went through a lot of that and you hear it, and then you're like, and she's just keeps growing what she's doing.
Right. Yeah, I think like you said there, as she moves forward, she's just like, let's go do it. And she's very much of an optimist. But a very I like how you said everybody needs somebody like her in her life. It's like, all right, it's gonna be okay, but we're gonna go do this. You kind of got that from her, which that was a great episode. And then we found out we were on somebody's podcast, and we didn't even know. I think that was pretty funny. But is Nikki Green. As a matter of fact, we were both on her podcast separately, and we didn't even know it. But talking about a mindset and somebody who's written books and really just like understanding how to understand somebody's value, like take a look at your own value. That's what I took from her the first time we met. I was at the chamber meeting getting ready to go into some interviews, and I really liked how she was just go in asking for what you're worth, understand what you're worth. People hire people because of what they who they know, their connections, and what they bring to the table, not for, what they're going to do. And that was one of the biggest things, that I believe it was Chameleon Mindset. Is that what it is? Yep.
Plain
So
Mindset. Yep, that's her
yeah.
book. And she sets really ambitious goals and then like has the backing. And
Hmm.
it's like if yeah, I think she just shows you what's possible. Like you can set ambitious goals and that's how you cascade your opportunities. And there's so many visuals out this time of year with like it being almost New Year's and like how to change your life and this many steps. And if you are thinking about setting an ambitious goal for yourself, I am not personally a fan of resolutions, but teach their own. But if you're looking to set some goal, her episode is empowering because here's somebody who is putting it all out there and
Hmm.
then doing it.
Yeah.
And so I resonate a lot with her story with, like the running and just like she's a go-getter in whatever she decides to do. And she's gonna get your mind right because that's the work that she does. So if you are like, I really want a mindset person who does this, breathes this, Nikki is the person to connect with.
Exactly. Exactly. Then we went outside. Let's go. Into Texas, Rachel Flynn. What a great story that is. Just because it was such a flick of the switch, something way different in education, yet the mindset that she had going into, doing what she does. Yeah, tell us a little bit about Rachel. I mean, you know her, right? And you
Yes,
worked with
yeah,
her for a long time.
yeah.
Um, yeah, that
I've
that
known
episode was very eye-opening. It kept reminding me of a time when my son, we were in Ohio and he was probably 5, and there was just this really cool park ranger who came up, and that's the first person I started to think of when we had Rachel Flynn on.
her story of self-discovery will inspire you. I think her episode, if you have a young person that is feeling an angst about what they need to do with their life, she will release them from the pressure of whatever they feel they need to do. I've known Rachel half my life, and so I've been I've seen a lot of her life story unfold, and at every point she's just like one of the most resilient people that I know. And her her ability to bring people into whatever work she's doing, like she is so passionate about being a park ranger and bringing people into the parks and having them have a 10 out of 10 experience. But it's like so disruptive because I did not realize all the resources that state, federal, national parks can have to do
Hmm.
programming with
Yes.
schools. They
Yeah.
want that. And so it's such an untapped, underutilized opportunity. And so I got to learn even more about her work through that episode. We don't always talk about some of the things that we brought up on the podcast. Like, side note, she's one of my best friends, but like but she is an educational disruptor. I
Right.
mean, it's not really a surprise that me and you are connected and have had friendships for a very long time. It's like you write your own story, right? You have these relationships with people that are doing really unique things, and then it comes full circle in different ways that you never expected. Like I didn't be like, hey Rachel, when we were in college and talking about changing the world, I didn't really think we were going to be podcasting about it 18 years later. So
Yeah.
it's cool.
She's one of the things that we did. I mean, we give if you follow us on LinkedIn, we do it out on TikTok, YouTube. Not so much on Instagram. I got to get back on there, but what we do is we put a lot of shorts out on our episodes, and after they drop, and she got a lot of people were like, I didn't know like the park rangers were part of this and stuff. So it was really eye-opening for a lot of our listeners and fans. And then we rounded out the mindset series. We always, I get 2 students, and I didn't know if I was going to do it. And then we had a conversation and I will thank you for this, Allie, because I was like, I don't know. And then I grabbed two, Sam and Mo, to kind of round it out. Um, you know, both of these students are very curious learners who are active learners. As a matter of fact, just about a week ago, I got a message from Sam, like, can you connect me with more marketing people? I'm looking for different ways to learn and grow. I legitimately like just threw some things out there, and she's like, "Thank you so much," just eating it up still, as a freshman in college. And Mo, the photographer, both of these young people, really, these episodes are just like you don't have to wait to start. You can just continually go. So, what did you take from Sam and Mo?
Just the fresh mindset of endless possibilities of youth, and truly, with Mo, literally a snapshot in time can change your life.
Hmm.
I mean, if you need the what to get your mind right, you got to connect with young people. I believe they will reinvigorate you more than anything else. And I think it just always grounds the podcast because, talking to those who are fresh out of the system. How
Hmm.
what did you get out of it? Where did we, miss you? Like
Yeah.
what parts, what can we do? Like that fresh perspective is what I needed, you needed, our
Hmm.
listeners needed. And when you're trying to get your mindset right on disrupting education, it really does have to come back to the students,
Right.
right? Like we can't lose sight of that. And, that really does bring us in. And we did wrap up in last week's episode our fall series
Hmm.
with developing your purpose and people deep in the work of disrupting education. But Scott Carr really does talk about, like, what are we doing here?
Right.
And like, if the students don't know what and why we're doing stuff, like, it's not going to translate. And so, speaking with Sam and Mo, they'll give you the what you need to
Hmm.
get your mind right to reach young people. They are the young people.
Yeah.
And you if you're trying to disrupt education, you have to point your work back to them, like the why, the what, and the how. And you
Hmm.
can't lose sight of that. And so they're great to listen to. They're not gonna be like an award-winning speaker, that
Right.
we've had on the episode. They're not gonna have all their ums out of there. We don't even have that. But that's not the purpose of every episode.
Right.
It's if you want to disrupt education, you have to stay grounded. I truly believe this. You have to stay grounded in where the young people are at. And you have to talk to
Exactly.
them. You
Yeah.
have to talk to them.
Yeah, and those two episodes will give you a fresh perspective if you're ever struggling with students, and or especially at the teen level, or just understanding why. Sam really never holds back. She's just like, you know what, I'm just going to tell you what it is. She didn't even in class, which I really appreciated, but I could understand like where some educators might get upset about that. And then Mo like really went SEL, like he went really social emotional. He unpacked a lot from COVID, which, yes, it was, 4 or 5 years ago now. However, it still had an impact on these young people and even educators as well. So, it's okay to kind of go back in and really, unpack that a little bit. Be okay with we were in a very interesting situation 4 years ago, 5 years ago now, and we still need to remember that did kind of adjust some people's paths, and these two students did a great job with that. So we're going to hit the why, but we're going to do kind of a power session here because our last podcast we did unpack these
Yep.
speakers. I'm going to shoot through the speakers here because if you want to go and listen to a deeper why, it will be our last podcast because we wrapped up this series. But we did have Scott Carr, Christy Valesky, which at the time of this taping, Allie's going to have dinner with this evening. We have Kevin Fleming, amazing guy, Christine Cruz Vergara, Mark C. Perna, Brooke Rice, Dan Gonzalez, which I was actually in a meeting with last night, which was very cool, and Scott Carr, by the way. We were doing some things for the spring, and then just a great roundup with your instructor, Jen Sharp of the skydiving area. So, yeah, what was your big, like, if we go big takeaway from that, because people, we can go into deeper commentary on that on the last episode.
Yes. So, right, we started that fall series with Scott Carr, and he really showed the importance of getting everybody to understand the why we're here, to then go into the what, to then do the how. And ironically or unironically, our podcast did it in reverse, which is a perfect example of like what Scott Carr, most people want to start with the how and then
Mm-hmm.
go to the what and then eventually figure out the why. And he shows us why you got to go the other direction.
Mm-hmm.
And he does a phenomenal job. So, like, the other episode that I think is like a must. You, if you're gonna re-listen to any episode besides Don Wettrick, it's Scott Carr's episode.
Mm-hmm.
He'll give you a blueprint for how to disrupt education, and there's a definitely a reason why you connected with him and continue to
Yeah.
connect with him. Doing incredible work. He's very humble too.
Mm-hmm.
But all of our fall speakers are people. Each one, we've been mentioning this kind of sprinkled throughout the podcast, but like give you a master class in a specific area. It's
Right.
more heavily on CTE and work-based learning and how to integrate, career readiness and whatever readiness post high school. But it's each one is a standalone, like free masterclass in whatever the topic is for that week. And it's incredible. Then we do go through each of those to summarize them. If you're like, I'm not sure which of these people, they're all great, but if you only have time for one or two, go back to the last week's episode to kind of like hear the summaries to decide. But all of them are great people to connect with. And as you mentioned, like are wonderful people. Christy is coming through Minnesota. She's at a summit right now, 10 minutes away from where I
Mm-hmm.
live, and we're gonna go get dinner. And like it's just so fun to connect with these people. A lot of these people in your new role you have gotten to work with.
Right.
You're doing this why, what, how work. So, you're like in the trenches going through it, which is exciting for 2025 because I feel like you needed 2024's podcast episodes more than you've needed any other year.
Right.
I don't know.
No,
Besides when you
I
started.
agree.
Besides when you started.
Yeah, this was a transition year for me. And when you do start new somewhere, you have to learn the culture, you have to meet people, you have to listen more than you talk. And which is very difficult for me. My friends will say, why did I start a podcast? I got to talk all the time. However, yeah, a lot of I utilize these conversations in the classroom and in the programs that we're building, especially in our internship programs. Being a coordinator, we have several buckets to fill, and you can see things from all sides, from the community, from the education standpoint, from the parent standpoint, from the state standpoint. And yeah, I mean, we have had deep conversations with a lot of these people who I really don't think I could have done my job this fast, adjusting into this new school district that I'm in without a lot of the people that I've talked to. So I think that is a master class in itself. You can really take what you need and really see the value that everybody that we interview bring, but just take what you need out of it. And like you said, each one of these are a master class. I mean, it really is. We're conversating with people, and if you follow up, and you don't have to reach out. You can take a look at LinkedIn. You can jump into people's websites, see what they do. There is a lot of value, an amazing amount of value in there that you can learn from. And if you want to even take that next step, yes, there are products and services here. There are. However, like not all. Like I did not use a lot of these products and services from the people here. I bought a few books, got a few great places to read. But as an educator, I think to move forward, and you don't have to move forward quickly. I used to look at all my guests and say, man, I wish I was where they were, until I just humbled up and started taking bits and pieces and then started building my own, whatever that was, my own classroom, my own programs. I shouldn't say my own programs, our teams, because we were always working with teams. And that's how you use a podcast. And we're gonna light it up just like we did with Don Wettrick. We have a pyromaniac coming for the beginning of 2025.
We are very excited for 2025 and just where it will take us, because it's like anything, so 2023 was our first full year podcasting together. 2024, I think, is where we really like kind of grew as podcasting together. And it's like people, if you go back and listen to like, mid 2022 podcasting, me and you versus now, I mean, it's completely different. And it's fun to see that growth.
Yeah.
It is. Just in like selfishly, right? Like our own journey. But we do that, like the more we invest into the podcast and like try and find really good guests, really unique guests, inspirational guests, people deep in the work in variety of ways, we're better able to like be a resource for you all on how to disrupt education and get kind of that weekly, like it helps us stay grounded weekly, but then it's really for you all, because like we could just record, we just have these conversations and not put them out, but you do a phenomenal job distributing them literally all over the internet so that people can reach them and find the person that you need in this moment, in this time, in order to move yourself forward inside or outside of the system, but to better help the educational system, because we can't do it alone. And I think the more people we talk to, the more I just realize like it's coming together, like the movement is coming, like people are, there's more and more, like, I think bigger resources and ones that can reach you no matter where you're at. And that's what I'm excited for 2025, and seeing like the growth of some of these guests, and then like where, like, how did they get there and who did they work with, so we can bring basically their mentors and people. So just, leveling up.
Yes. Absolutely. 2025 is going to be a great year. I can't believe it's been another year, Ali. Thank you so much for being a great co-host. Couldn't do this without you. Again, like I think you just you circle yourself with people who care and really want to make a difference in education. And, hopefully everybody else takes that lesson out there. When I wanted to change everything by myself, and then you quickly realize you can't, but with a team of people, you can do a lot. So here's to 2024. Merry Christmas, happy holidays. Thank you all for hanging out with us. Next week on New Year's Day, we're going to light it up. We got a great guest. We're coming right in, and it's not Don Wettrick, although it could be, but we're coming in the same kind of energy and still leveling up. So I want to thank you all for another great year. Thank you for listening. Please spread the word. We are continually growing. We've got almost $250,000 views on YouTube alone through all of our shorts and everything. Keep the comments coming. I get some great ones. We strike nerves sometimes, and that's kind of what you need to do to disrupt education, and that's why we're here. So for Ali Dahl, I'm Peter Hostrasser. We'll catch you next year on the Disrupt Education Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Disrupt Education Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Are you ready to disrupt the educational arena you're a part of? For more ways to get involved in the work we do here at Disrupt Education, check us out at disrupteducation.co. or find us on LinkedIn at Peter Hostrasser or Allie Privet.
Our mission here is to help facilitate and amplify changes in the educational system through local initiatives and help you scale them into community movements. Our building network of disruptors in education are working to move beyond scores and grades as the only measure for student learning. If your school district, college, campus, or organization is looking for facilitators of this work, reach out on our website or social media.
And if you have any thoughts or feedback on this week's episode or any episode, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries, taking risks, and most importantly, disrupting education.